mental workers, you're listening to the Mental Work Podcast, the podcast about working in mental health for early career mental health workers. As always, I'm your host, Dr. Bronwyn Milkins, and today we are talking about a really cool approach to burnout prevention. It's called the SPARKS, and it's a no BS approach. In this episode, we're going to get real about burnout, why traditional self-care often misses the mark, and how you can stay well and thrive as a mental health worker with a practical, guilt-free approach that centers you without overwhelming you. Here to help us out with this topic is our guest, Danielle Graber. Hi, Danielle.
Hi, thank you so much for having me back. It's so nice to be back and talking about SPARKS.
It is lovely to have you back. Listeners, if you haven't listened to Danielle's previous episode on the podcast, it was about animal-assisted therapy. And I loved that because I love animals and I love talking with Danielle about that. It was a great episode. So I'll pop that in the show notes and make sure you go back and listen to that. But today, Danielle, you're here to talk to us about a model that you've created for burnout prevention. It's called SPARKS. Could you please tell listeners who you are and a SPARKS-based activity you've recently undertaken?
Sure. I'm Danielle Graber. I'm a clinical psychologist, an animal-assisted therapist, board-approved supervisor. I run 12-point psychology and training in Ferntree Gully in Melbourne, which is a psychology clinic plus an online training arm where we do professional development for therapists and have done for the last 6 years. But over COVID, and looking at the impact of that on all of the arms of the business, on the client work, on the supervisees, on their client work, on the morale of the admin team, it became really obvious that we needed something different. Something was very, very broken and had been broken for a long time, long before COVID. It's just COVID really kind of, the straw that broke the camel's back kind of thing. So I went back to the basics. I went into hyper-focused deep dive research mode and developed this new approach to not just definitely burnout prevention and recovery, but also just how to live and function and work as a human and as a therapist, because that's something I don't think that we are terribly good at naturally, and it's not something that's terribly encouraged.
Yeah, it's not really taught. Having done my training in 2017 and then doing the 5+1 internship after that, it's not something that I covered in supervision. It's not something that I recall covering much in the content of what I listened to at university. It was kind of like do self-care, like as a one-liner.
Yes, that was it.
It's probably a good idea that you self-care, but it was never described how to go about that, nor I think were I prepared for the realities of working as a therapist and how overwhelming that might be. It's like I took it on board as a trainee and I was like, oh yeah, this is probably important. I can just keep up the usual things that I do. And then you get this emotional overwhelm and this sense of responsibility that comes with being a therapist. And it's like, oh, these strategies aren't going to cut it.
It honestly feels to me a little gaslighty that... Because same, I did my initial training in 2000, I started in 2005 and do self-care, but that was the extent of it. And then every place that I worked and every organization that I worked within and all the jobs, their expectations went completely counter to the idea of looking after yourself in any way. And things are slightly better now, mostly.
Yeah.
But not across the board. And a big part of SPARKS was learning that the early life traps and the early behaviors and beliefs that we took on board that often led us to become therapists in the first place, and then kind of made us prime candidates for burnout and really being taken advantage of in a lot of ways. So the idea of just have a massage once a month and go to the gym, and that's going to somehow counter all of the pressures and the expectations that we carry into the field and that continue to be expected of us once we're in the field. It's no wonder that we're in a little bit of a mess.
So with SPARKS, you created it during the COVID, and I'll contextualize it because you're in Melbourne, aren't you?
I am, yes.
Yes. Whereas I'm in Perth, and during COVID, it was pretty crazy. But Perth had one of the least amount of lockdowns in the world. I think we had 2 weeks because we kicked everybody out of the state and we pretty much closed our state.
We did, yes.
Whereas Melbourne, you guys had several months and months and months on end of pretty intense lockdowns.
we ended up, I think we became the most lockdowns in the world.
That's a huge
Italy and
contrast.
us were on par for a while, but no, I think we ended up beating them. It pretty much became 2 years off and on. The longest lockdown was 6 months in one go, and then we had 2 weeks out, and we got locked down again. So I made it through 2020, just, and then we got about 3 months into 2021 and went, oh no. Like I finally clicked something was really not well, and I burnt out big time, and started looking around and going, all of the stuff that they are recommending that I do is not helping, and I feel like it's making it worse. So what's that about? And we need something different. And SPARKS really grew out of that. Burnout is a syndrome. The World Health Organization recognized it as a syndrome in 2022, finally. They fall short of calling it a medical syndrome, but there are physiological changes, there are neurological changes, and obviously psychological changes. I don't know why that's not a medical syndrome. And if we don't address all areas of that, how do we expect it to get better? So part of SPARKS was, all right, well, how do we address all of those things when we're already in a place where our brain's not working properly, our body's just beyond exhausted, and we're probably burnt out because we're doing too much in the first place. So how are we going to make a change when we're already coming from such a deficit place?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's such a difficult place to be in. How do we come back and reconnect when we're in a pretty dark space?
Yeah. And literally neurological changes that make it harder to connect, that, lower things like the, oxytocin levels in your brain. So social reciprocity doesn't count for as much. And it's designed to keep you isolated and feeling bad. So countering that by doing more, that's nuts.
Oh, yes. And that's like the psychologists often do as well. We're like, I'm burnt out. I'm going to take on 5 courses and do more work.
Yeah. Or, I'm burnt out. I'm going to take some time off from client work, and I'm going to develop an entire new approach to fixing burnout.
I'm not dubbing anybody in. Nobody in this room is implicated in that.
Yeah. Look, I do not pretend for a second that I've got this stuff all sorted and done now either.
Yeah.
SPARKS is incredibly helpful and has made such a big difference, but it's a work in progress. And that's the good bit and the bad bit, because I know we all want a checklist. We all want to do this, then do this, then do this, and you will feel fine and you won't burn out again. And that doesn't exist.
Yeah. And just like, that just really resonates with me, because I totally do want a checklist. Nothing would delight me more if you gave me a bit of like laminated paper and was like, this is the checklist you follow to health. I'd be like, this is the best thing ever.
Yep, I know. I would love to. I want one of those. One of those. But that doesn't work. I've tried that. It doesn't work.
No.
Because we do tend to, because we have those, often perfectionistic, self-sacrificing schemas, or, default beliefs and things that got us here in the first place, then yeah, you give us a checklist, we will follow it to the letter. And one of the myths that I believed was, if I just have to exercise regularly, and then that, that's self-care, that's burnout prevention, that's self-care. But then that got to the point where I'd be at the gym 3 or 4 times a week, sure, but I wouldn't rest if I was hurt or injured or sick. It was like, no, because if I don't do that, then I'll burn out. When the thing that was burning me out was these rigid standards that I have to adhere to, that aren't a choice, it's just a have to. This week, I had a doctor's appointment that was supposed to go for, that I'd sort of budgeted, this much time for, and it finished early. The doctor was on time, and everything went to plan, and I ended up with like an extra hour. Previously, 100%, I would have gone, bonus, I'll get back to work and I've got an extra hour of work now. I can work on this, this, and this. This time I went, I did my SPARKS check-in and went, you know what? It's quite a nice sunny day today, and I think I'm just going to stop at the Arboretum on the way back. And I stopped at the Arboretum, got out of the car, and I went and I sat and I watched ducks in a pond, and just chilled for, I think I was there for about 30 minutes or something. And previously, one, I would never have even considered doing that. But two, even if I did, I would have felt so guilty. It's just like, no, you got this bonus time. Why aren't you putting this to more productive use? Like, what are you doing just sitting watching ducks?
How did you give yourself permission to do that? Like, what was the thought process going through your head?
Well, I mean, the thought process now is different because we're, I'm sort of 3 years into SPARKS work, but it goes something along the lines of, if I was newer to it, there's an actual decision checklist.
Oh, okay,
So,
cool.
I said there's no checklists. There is the
There is a
decision making.
checklist. I'm in.
There is a decision making checklist,
Okay.
and you weigh up. It's option A versus option B against the SPARKS domains. So I've got this extra hour. What am I going to do with it? Well, I can go back to work and get some more work done, or I could do something else. I could go and get a massage. Like, I don't want to knock massages and gym. Like, those things are awesome. It's just they're not the only thing, and they're not. It's not them that's going to fix the burnout or prevent the burnout. It's your relationship to them and how you use them. But so the decision becomes then against each of the SPARKS domains, which option is more true to the SPARKS. So which one is going to increase my feelings of emotional safety and containment, or help soothe my nervous system, or be better for my body? Which one's going to feel like more of an achievement? Which one's getting me more towards the path that I want to be walking rather than the old path that I'm trying to get off? Which one is showing more kindness to myself and all of my parts, not just my work part, but my partner part and my dog mum part and my friend part and my inner vulnerable child part, whatever. Which one has the most to gain, the most to give to those parts, and which one's going to be a bit more fun?
Yeah, because the duck sounds nice. I like that idea of walking the, or not walk. I was going to say walking the duck, of watching the ducks.
It was amazing. It was amazing. And in large part because it was so different, and I knew I was doing something that I would never have done a couple of years ago.
Yeah.
And I could take pride in that, and there was achievement in that as well, of doing something that felt good, that was good for me, that I could feel my nervous system like resetting. And it just, the rest of the day goes so much easier and so much better. And it's such a, and this is sort of what I mean about with SPARKS. I talk a lot about doing versus being, and doing differently, not doing more. So I had that hour. I wasn't taking it away from anything else. It was a bonus hour, if you like. Doing more would have been using that hour to, do something else that was, in quotes, productive. Old pathway version of productive. This was allowing me to be, and allowing my nervous system to rest and get more of what it needed, and set me up for a much, much better evening and probably the rest of the week.
So it sounds like, really reconnecting with what, I guess, your health and well-being, and like centering that as a value, and then making decisions based on that. How am I going to help myself in the future? It's kind of like how can past me help future me?
Yes, exactly. And that's like our tagline is, your future self will thank you.
Oh, nice one. Okay, cool.
So perfect.
Yeah.
It's like, what's going to be the biggest overall benefit right now. And so that's when you've got like that sort of in the moment decision making stuff.
So maybe this is a good time to talk about the domains of SPARKS, because we've said SPARKS a lot, but I just want to go through the 6 domains, because you mentioned it's integrative, and it truly is. So I'll just say the domains out loud. So we've got safety and boundaries, physical health and body care, achievement and acknowledgement, relationships and connections, kindness and nurturance, and the last one is spontaneity and entertainment. So it really is a holistic view of our health and well-being.
So SPARKS comes from a very integrative evidence base. There's principles in here from the neuroscience of chronic pain, from biofeedback, from internal family systems and schema and ACTS. There's a lot that goes into it, but at its core, part of what we're doing is, absolutely looking at holistically at our overall health and well-being, mental, physical, all the rest of it. But we're also trying to heal some old ruptures. We're trying to heal some old unmet needs. So if you look at those, and if you know anything about schema, you might recognize, some parallels there with some of the core needs that we have as kids for optimal development. That need for consistency, that need for safety, that need for autonomy, spontaneity, play, all of that kind of thing. These are like the adult versions of those needs. Because what I discovered when I started looking into this was 80 to 85% of therapists did not have these needs met consistently when they were kids.
Yeah.
And that leads to huge numbers of perfectionism, people pleasing, trauma responses. Whether it's big T trauma, little T trauma, but that's what it's cooked up. That's what it's resulted in. You combine that with the fact that, like we were saying earlier, with the self-care, since I've been doing these presentations and things, we do surveys when we do the presentations for workplaces and things like that. I think at the moment we've got 200 and something surveys completed, and 93% of respondents have never done any self-care training, learning, not at uni, not as part of their professional development, nada. Which is terrifying.
It's a lot.
I knew it. It's a lot.
But if I was to do that survey, I would say the same thing. I've never actually formally done a workshop or professional development on self-care.
Nope. And neither had I until
until you developed the approach. Yeah.
And the 7% who have done, it was either paid for by a workplace, like me coming in to talk to them, or they just it's less than 1% paid for it themselves, but most were, that 7% mostly were a workplace had organized it or paid for it. And of that 7%, none of them found it helpful.
I was just going to say, I actually lied because it's triggered a memory in me that I have done a self-care course. I just didn't engage with it.
There you go.
So I downloaded it. I remember doing it and I was like, okay, this is nice. Thanks. And then I didn't do any of the activities and I just put it and I was like, tick, which is a terrible way, obviously, to engage with professional development. And I wish I'd actually done it.
But that tells you something. I think that tells us something really important that's been really, really lacking, because it's not like those were hidden stats. Why is this not being kind of talked about and screamed from the rooftops? Why have we not seen any changes to the self-care research or literature or offerings in 50 years? Because it's obviously not working.
No. Yeah, because I remember the course I did now, and it was like a few Word docs, and I just remember finding it so boring. And as an ADHD, I really need engaging content. Don't give me like 50 pages of a Word doc. It's not going to happen.
And if you're already burnt out or burning out, that's what is that going to do? Like, no, that's not going to work. That's not going to work.
You've got this holistic approach which supports well-being, but it also helps to address past beliefs that have come maybe with unmet core needs. And I was going to say as well, I actually went to a trauma-informed care workshop, and one of the questions that the presenters asked the mainly psychologist audience was just how many people have experienced, and they put up the adverse child experiences questionnaire. How many of you have experienced adverse childhood experiences? And it's like everyone was like, yes, like 2 or more of these. So
we score very highly. We
actually do. Yeah. And the presenter said that she's done surveys of psychologists, and when you look at the stats for exposure to adverse childhood experiences, it does seem to be a little bit higher than the general population, which was shocking to me. But
no, not shocking, unfortunately. Not shocking now. 15 years ago, I probably would have been shocked. Because those, and you tend to find those lots of over-parentification and lots of what I'm calling unsupported autonomy. So a core childhood need is for autonomy. And if you ask most therapists, how much autonomy did you have as a child? They'll say, I had lots. I had lots of independence and freedom. but it was not supported. It was a sink or swim kind of autonomy. It was an over-parentification, or it was you're the mature one, or you're the good girl or boy, or you're the, there was a role,
Yeah.
and that served other people. But we took pride in it because we did it well, and often did things. I mean, I think about, like, I used to babysit for not just my siblings, but for other kids. I was like 11 doing overnight babysitting gigs.
Wow.
And I think about that now. I can work with kids. I think about some of my 11-year-old kids, and I'm like, oh dear God, no.
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 Yeah.
But I was incredibly proud of that. You develop this really good at reading people, really good at tuning in and noticing and being hypervigilant to threats, to how someone else is feeling. You get really, really good at suppressing your own needs in favor of everybody else's. And then you look around and you go, hey, look, there's this profession and that's all they do.
Yeah. And then
So
you're
it's
really
like,
good at it.
yeah, then I'm really good at it and I get praise for it and the clients all like me. And my organization loves the fact that I'll do 6 hours of overtime and not ask for pay.
Yeah. Yeah. What a
Like,
team player.
and then you get, for example, then you get fired because you say, actually, it's my birthday tonight and I really need to head off. They're having a party for me at this restaurant. Well, we'll need to talk about this. I thought you were a team player.
Mm.
And then you feel guilty about it and get depressed about it for quite a while because you feel like you did something wrong by saying, no, putting in a boundary. And yeah.
Yeah. So it sounds like therapist guilt is something that you've observed a lot, which comes up in the SPARKS, I guess, coaching and workshops that you do.
Yes. The therapist guilt is terrifyingly real and strong. And this is not for everyone. This is not for every single therapist
Yeah.
out there, obviously. But a good 80% or so, it's pretty strong. And if we don't address that, then that's such a big blind spot. A lot of what we do in SPARKS is trying to unearth some of those blind spots or traps that we fall into without even realizing that it's a trap. And the number of times talking to supervisees, for example, and they might say, I'm feeling really, really stuck with this client. They're just not improving and I don't know where to go. And I just feel like we're not doing anything. And we talk about it and they've had 2 sessions with this person who's got a really complex presentation. And like, what did you think was going to happen in 2 sessions? Like, where do you think you should be in 2 sessions? These internal expectations and drivers on what constitutes good therapy or a good therapist, and that unsupported autonomy tends to lead to what I think is one of the biggest risk factors for developing burnout and just generally being fairly miserable, where I don't know if you're familiar, it's a bit of an old term now, but the idea of the internal external locus of control
Oh, yes. Yes.
research.
Yep.
Do you
Heard of
remember that from?
Yeah.
Yeah. So it used to be, external locus of control, you're at life's whim. There's no self-efficacy. You just, whatever happens, happens. But I think with therapists, what I've noticed is there's a split. So we tend to have an external locus of control when it comes to the good stuff, to the achievements. So if the client's doing really, really well, we say it's all them, or it was luck, or it was good timing, or they've worked really hard, but it wasn't us. But when the client's not doing well or something's gone wrong, we have an internal locus of control. That's
It's
all
so
my fault.
true. It's so true. I can see myself in that image because when a client is doing well, I'm like, oh, they had a really good environment. Their partner's so supportive. And then when they're not doing well, I'm like, why am I so awful? Like, how am I not supporting them well?
Yep, 100%. Yeah, you are not alone in that one by any means. And it's so bad.
Yeah, it is. It's so true.
But it is. It's so pervasive.
And it's so self-defeating because it's like as soon as you say it, as soon as I hear me say it, I'm like, yeah, of course that's bad. Like it's so self-defeating. It's so senseless, beating yourself up, and it's so illogical.
But that tells you that this is an old trap. This is an
Yes.
old schema. This is an old pathway. This is whatever we want to call it. This is an old message that's coming through into the present. And it's a really, really good signal that you're looking at a trauma-driven response rather than a values-driven one, which is then something that you can you can do something about, because you learnt that way. You learnt that that was the case. You can learn different. It just takes a little bit of work.
So you mentioned in your ebook that SPARKS helps us to repair, not just bail. What does that mean in practice for someone on the verge of burnout?
So I used to use an analogy that I think spoke more to my medical days, which was that for a long time I felt that self-care was just like putting little band-aids on gaping wounds. You know, we're gushing bloods and they're just like, have a massage. But the blood analogy got a bit gross for some people, so we went with the boat.
Okay.
which is fair. And that is the idea that when we're born, we're given a rowboat. And if our mother was really not stressed and had a wonderful pregnancy and there's no genetic history and we've got a really nice supportive environment, then the rowboat's probably in pretty good shape. We know for therapists that's generally not the case, that we're not generally born with a great looking rowboat, and childhood usually makes it worse. Every time there's another ACEs score, that's another hole in that rowboat. That you grow up thinking that's normal, that everyone's boats look like that and there's nothing you can do about it, because no one tells you there's anything you can do about it. And you can have therapy and that can help for sure. But I think for therapists having therapy, this is something they don't consider. They don't look at this part of it. And you head out onto the big bad ocean and things are going fine for a while because you're used to bailing out that water that's always coming in. It's always been coming in, so you're used to just constantly bailing it out. Self-care becomes like, maybe it gives you an extra bucket for a little while, or it gives you a bigger bucket or a prettier bucket, but it just fundamentally doesn't change the fact that you're spending a lot of energy constantly bailing out all of this water that keeps gushing in. And it never even occurs to you that you can do something about the holes. Especially once you get into psychology and now suddenly you're in a massive ocean with all of these other people in equally leaky rowboats all going, this is how you bail out faster. Come on, keep it up. You can do it.
Yeah.
So when we talk about that sort of custom roadmap for people, it's identifying where your leaks are and what do we need to do to change up in really, 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 really small concrete ways to start with, that might start not just helping you feel a bit better day to day, but actually start to address some of these leaks and repair them.
Something I really like about Sparks and what you're doing is that you center self-care and well-being. Whereas when you were talking before, I was like, when you start out as a psych, you have so much to learn, right? There is so much to keep in mind. You're trying to keep in mind the techniques and you're learning these modalities, learning how to work with these specific populations, keeping in mind your professional ethical obligations, all your note-taking. How do I do that? How do I manage these systems? And then you've got self-care, and it can just be a thing like, I'm just going to watch a movie at home. But like you said, it's bailing out rather than actually fixing the holes. And I really like how you've given permission to center this. Like, so thank you. But I'm glad that you're doing it, because I feel like we don't get that enough. It's like, I feel like we don't have enough permission to be able to center self-care.
No, not at all. And we've got a really skewed idea of what self-care actually looks like, because it has been band-aids on wounds up until now. It has been, bigger or prettier buckets. It has been bail faster. Whereas, is it the Jungian quote around, no, it's the Rogers quote, the more I accept myself, the more I can change. It's the same with SPARKS. So for a lot of, particularly the early career psychs who are listening to this going, I don't have room for this. I don't have capacity for any more stuff. I'm paying attention to the client and I'm doing this and I'm doing this. And it's such a steep learning curve. But the ironic thing is, considering that this comes about because of the high degree of people pleasing and perfectionism and all of that kind of thing, is if you need further permission, like ideally I want to get to the point where it's like, you're worth this all by yourself. But I'm being realistic. If you need further permission, think about it in this way. What do we know is the consistently proven most important single contributing factor to good client outcomes?
The relationship.
There we go. Yes. Okay. Now, where are we putting all of our concentration, all of our training, all of our time, all of our money, all of our effort? Which side of the relationship is getting all of that attention? We focus on the client and their needs and their wants and what's good for them. And I'm not saying we shouldn't do that. I'm saying if it's a relationship, then there are two people in that relationship. And if you ignore one altogether, that's not good. That's not a reciprocal, genuine relationship.
So true.
And the more you, because it is all that it helps you to get out of the mindset of doing and overdoing, you're much more likely to be present in that room, to pick up on a shift in the client, to be more comfortable being another human in the room. And when you do that, then the specific technique for that specific client in this specific moment becomes less important than just being there and being another human and concentrating on the relationship. So you actually stress less because I don't have to know the manualized approach to binge eating disorder in 21-year-olds with this kind of history. I just need to know that this is how this person's feeling right now. And I don't have to come up with something brilliant to say. I can just be here with them. It makes it so much easier and so much less stressful. And then afterwards, you go and you can look up some of the specific things. But the question that it's harder to ask these days because everything's online. But in the old days when we had our paper files, and you used to be able to really freak out a therapist by saying, imagine the client shows up and you can't find their file and you've just got to go in and you can't read what happened last session and you don't know what's happened and, your face. Yeah.
Well, it's happened. It's happened even because I use iPad and it's like iPad ran out of battery.
It won't. Yeah, exactly. It happens. And most therapists, freaks them the hell out.
Freak out. Yeah. That's totally
concentrating because you're concentrating on the doing. You're concentrating on what I have to do here instead of the being. So this is how we can sort of use our self-sacrificing, people-pleasing stuff against us to say, if you really want to help the client and really genuinely be there for them and really give them a solid, authentic, genuine therapeutic relationship, you have to look after yourself.
It's so true. I find that very convincing. I think that's a convincing way of putting it. And it's something that I've said to myself over the years to help myself. I think that if I'm an electrician, I've got my tools that I can use as an electrician. I can rely on my tools. I'm in therapy, I am the tool. There's only me. There's me here in the room. I need to look after me.
100%. You're the most important tool that you have.
Yes.
Your ability to connect, your ability to relate, your ability to attune, your ability to think on your feet, all of that stuff is super important. But nothing is as important as being another human in the room.
So true. And I think we get a lot of respect from clients when that does happen. I noticed when one of the strategies I put in to prevent burnout is I take regular time off. And at one point in my practice, I was taking a week off every 6 weeks. So I'd have 6 weeks of practice and then I'd take a week off. And that was just what I needed at the time. And I remember clients querying this and being like, oh, did you not just take off some time? And I told one of them, I was like, this is part of my burnout prevention strategy. And they were like, oh, wow, that's awesome. I'm going to do that.
Yes, exactly. There's a really, really, a really nice idea. We're talking about it a bit I talked about it recently in a video that we did with a couple of other therapists who work in sort of burnout prevention space. But that compassionate friend stance from the point of view of the clients as well. How do you think your clients would like you to be treating yourself?
Yes.
I think some of them would be horrified if they knew the way that we talk to ourselves or the way that we treat ourselves or the staying up till late to finish a resource for them or, whatever it might be. I think some of them would be horrified if they knew.
I think they would. They totally would. Yeah. Imagine a client discovering that their therapist beats themselves up and is like, oh, how terrible am I? That kind of thing. They'd be mortified.
Yeah. And they would say, are you kidding? That was the best session we've ever had.
Yes. Yeah.
It's useful, I think. Again, ultimately, I want us to be doing this for our own sake. But realistically, we've got some pretty big leaks to patch up here. And so starting from a place of this is actually beneficial to the client, client outcomes get better when their therapist is doing this stuff. It's ironic, also makes perfect sense. And you become it just makes life so much easier. I can't even tell you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we're kind of coming up towards the end of our conversation, but I wanted to ask you if there are any common signs that a mental health worker might be slowly burning out, even though they're still, air quotes, functioning on the surface, just in case there are any listeners who are like, I'm not sure if this is resonating with me, and maybe there are some things that is happening for them that you see commonly.
Absolutely. Yes. I think it's useful to think about it. So with burnout, we've got three pillars. We've got the organizational side of things, which can be things like just, the admin, the behind the scenes parts of being a therapist, getting your registration, getting your PD. It might be the organization that you work for and policies within that. A place where I worked where you had to see 5 clients a day in the 8 hours, which would normally be okay, except they required you to complete all of the paperwork in triplicate. And it wasn't just like, it wasn't a carbon copy or something you could cut and paste. You had 3 different systems you had to enter this information into for every single client. And that's annoying. Yeah, and stupid.
Yeah. Yep.
And we're like, and especially for an ADHD, like, can you imagine by the third time you're doing this, just like, so, organizations where there's huge amounts of responsibility, but no autonomy whatsoever and things like that. So there can definitely be organizational issues. And if that's sort of the primary driver, you might see things like you're someone who's usually, even if you're not incredibly punctual, but you're there in time and, you're sitting down and you're ready to go at your desk by your first client. Suddenly you get this kind of late creep kind of sneaking in and you're 5 minutes late and then you're 10 minutes late and you couldn't necessarily say why, but it's just this quiet, sneaky creep lateness. You might suddenly start taking a lot more sick days. Because you might genuinely be getting a lot more illnesses. Again, it's a physiological process. Your immune system gets screwed up when you're burning out. So, if you're someone who has key sign in this domain is definitely, if you're someone who gets sick every time you take a holiday, you need to look at that because that's saying that your HPA, that hypothalamic pituitary axis, is under chronic stress conditions, which is a key indicator that we're heading for burnout or already burnt out. If you, what should we say? We'll get a little bit more on the judgmental side.
Oh, yes. Yeah.
A colleague has a bad day or drops a coffee cup and in your head, you're just like, stupid cow.
Yeah.
And then you're like, whoa, okay. That was a bit. You're a bit more judgmental. You lose that generosity of spirit. Like people are doing the best they can do. It's just like, she's doing that just to piss me off now. In the professional domain, that tends to be more related to the clinical work itself. You might notice just dreading the days, the sessions. You might notice that previously, a big one for me was previously, no matter how I was doing in general, if I was having physical health problems, if I was, I'd had some bouts of depression in the past, it just, whatever was going on, the therapy space was still my space. I felt the most me there. I felt the most comfortable and I still felt really useful and productive. And it was a refuge, and it really stopped being a refuge. And it became something that I started to dread, which was a huge thing for me. Resenting the clients, feeling more judgmental, starting to have really, you think that's a problem? You should have heard my 4 o'clock. Or
Yeah.
that comparison thing is a big sign. And actually, another really good example there of a simple SPARKS intervention to look at your caseload and identify your red light, green light clients.
Yeah.
Who are the clients when I see their name and I feel awesome? Yay! I get to work with this. And who are the clients that make you go, oh God, why are those 2 people back to back? Oh God. Looking at the balance, and it's not necessarily complexity or presentation, it's the fit, how well that client fits with how you work and how much effort you are putting into the sessions and that kind of thing. So the professional domain, those are the kinds of things to look for. And then the personal domain, it's withdrawing from friends, changes to sleep, appetite, all of the kind of normal stuff that you might look at for depression. But underlying that, more than guilt, is shame. Just a really pervasive sense of shame. I can't do anything right, and in a loss of connection to meaning, loss of connection in general, but loss of connection to meaning as well, or
Mm.
helplessness, that kind of thing.
Yeah, so there's a lot of signs there. And I guess like on the flip side, I didn't want to end the episode on a bit of a downer, I guess, by identifying all these like sad signs.
Yep.
So I wanted to point out something, which is you sent me an ebook of the SPARKS program, and I was really delighted to see in the program that you've measured how effective the SPARKS program has been. So you've given participants pre and post questionnaires. Some of them have been like the DAS-10, which measures depression, anxiety, stress, the ProQual, which is professional quality of life, and one measure of self-efficacy as well. And you found that it looks like all of these things pretty much increased. So there was less self-doubt, less burnout, boosted confidence, no more self-care band-aids, less distress, more satisfaction, which I think is really cool because it's like if there's a listener listening who is experiencing those things that you just described, there are ways to get out of that essentially. Like there are ways to change that. It doesn't have to be the end point.
No, no. And it's not inevitable. One of the biggest myths, I think, is if you care about your job, if you care about your clients, if you like your job, if you're good at it, then burnout is inevitable. It's the cost of caring. And that's not true. I used to think that was true, but no,
Yeah.
it's not. It's the cost of caring disproportionately,
Yes.
caring more about them than you do about yourself.
Yeah.
And I want to even that a little bit.
Yeah.
And the lovely thing has been that, the quantitative data at this point, I don't have huge numbers, so I can't sort of, say, oh, this proves that this and all the rest of it. I can say it's trending that way, which is nice.
That's nice.
But it's the qualitative stuff as well that's been really, really, really lovely. Like the past participant who emailed heading into Christmas and went, I've been going to this particular family Christmas thing for a decade and I hate it. And I do it because I'm the good girl and I'm supposed to. I didn't even realize that's why I was still doing it. And, that's the only contact that we have with them. They don't even know my daughter's name. They care that little about us. And I just cancelled. I just called and said, I'm not coming this year. And my heart's still going pretty fast, but feeling pretty good. And we're going to create our own little tradition on Christmas Eve instead. And this is what we're going to do. And it was so gorgeous. And I checked in with her afterwards to sort of see how she'd gone. And she's like, it's great. The sky didn't fall in. Nobody seemed to, I'm not sure half of them noticed. And I didn't go into it feeling this horrible sense of dread and obligation and then feel crappy for a week afterwards. And it was life-changing.
That's awesome.
And so simple, really.
Yeah.
I mean, so simple, just paying attention and going, oh, why am I still doing this?
Yeah. So really that permission to put in boundaries and prioritize yourself.
Yeah. I'm allowed to have a want here. I'm allowed to have a need and I'm allowed to ask for it to be met. And if it's not, I'm allowed to walk away.
Yeah, that's really awesome. So there's been a lot of great qualitative feedback. And I mean, it makes sense when you practice something deliberately, like this self-care approach, you can see changes and you really do emphasize those small intentional changes. So it doesn't surprise me that people see benefits there. And it's much more engaging, like as opposed to the course I was talking that I took before on self-care where it was like read the 50-page document. And I was like, yeah, that's nice. Thanks.
No. Even the SPARKS mini book, I tried so hard to keep that down.
Yeah, it's very engaging. I like it.
Thank you.
There's lots of pictures in there. I really appreciate pictures.
I like pictures too. So yeah, of course I'm going to include pictures.
Yeah, pictures are fun.
Yeah. And it's much easier now. I can use ChatGPT and everything to do the pictures because I'm terrible.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, no, it's helpful. So Danielle, I've really appreciated this conversation today. It's been really awesome hearing your perspective and your work in this area. What do you hope listeners will take away from our conversation most of all?
I would love them to take away that burnout is not inevitable. It's not a moral failing. It's a very predictable result to a certain configuration, a certain pattern of life experiences, behaviors, and a system that benefits from. And I don't mean that everyone who's in psychology business or organizations is exploiting on purpose, But, the system, there's a lot of holes in the system as well. And as long as they know that we'll keep filling them because we've got this people-pleasing perfectionistic thing going on, they don't have to change it.
Yes.
So if you make these little changes, if you start looking at your day differently, if you start looking at these small actions differently, the potential for there's a really good ripple effect potential there for you, for your clients, for your family, and potentially for the system in general, because as long as we keep plugging the holes in the system, then that's not going to change either.
100%. Yeah, and I always think as well, it's like we're so concerned with helping people in our community. There is such great community need for mental health support, but psychologists, we're important too. We're humans too.
Yes.
Yeah.
And we're better therapists when we're humans first.
100%. Danielle, thank you so much for joining me on the Mental Work podcast. I really appreciate it. If listeners want to learn more about you or get in touch or take one of your fabulous courses, where can they find you?
Oh, they can find me on my website, which is 12points.com.au. There's the clinic section, 12 Point Psychology, and the training section, and there's sections on SPARKS, and it honestly is a little bit of a reflection of my ADHD or brain on the website. So if you have any trouble navigating, send me an email, danielle@12points.com.au, or you can find me on Instagram, and there's little, SPARKS tips and tricks, including our new SPARKS theme song, which I'm very excited about.
Wow, that's really exciting. I want to see this. Did you write it, or is this an AI jingle?
I wrote the lyrics, and then AI created it. I'll send you a link.
I'd love to see the link. I love this. This is so cool. Wow. I've never I love the innovation here. Is what I'm thinking. Yeah.
That was some massive spontaneity and achievement. And just yeah, that was a lot of fun.
That is so much fun. That is really cool. Thanks, Danielle. Listeners, if you found this episode helpful, please consider following Mental Work, give us a rating or review on your favorite podcast app, and share this episode with a friend or a colleague who needs to hear it. That's a wrap. Thanks for listening to Mental Work. I'm Bronwyn Milkins. Have a good one and catch you next time. Bye.